Welcome back to the Gavel. Now, as we showed you earlier, the 2015 budget of 4.3 trillion naira passed the crucial second reading in the Senate and the House of Representatives. However, federal lawmakers in the Senate described the 2015 budget as a deficit budget, which is grossly exaggerated. Lawmakers in the upper chamber also expressed concern that in the face of the declining oil prices, the country may not be able to finance its capital and recurrent expenditure. We spoke with a lawyer and activist, Mr. Eze Onyekpere, to analyze the areas of concern raised by federal lawmakers over the 2015 budget.
Well, to talk about a budget predicated on an oil price of $65 per barrel, when the actual price today is less than $50, says a lot about the credibility of the budget. Because for a budget to be credible, the parameters and assumptions underlying the budget must relate to the facts on the ground and must be realistic. So for now, something needs to be done about that benchmark to bring it lower and in reality with the actual price of crude oil. Now, when you talk about deficit budgeting from the National Assembly perspective, I think that certain things should cause Nigerians to be a little bit not too happy. If you remember, the coordinating minister for the economy and minister of finance did indicate that government was cutting down on international travels, frivolous expenditures, so as to keep resources and focus and channel them properly towards expenditure that will impact on the lives of people. And when you take it from that perspective and realize that the budget of the National Assembly did not shift, their proposal was 150 billion, which has been their proposal and their vote for the past 4 years. So does it mean that the National Assembly must get 150 billion a year, whether Nigerians are living or dying? And considering that that is statutory expenditure, once it is passed, it takes precedence. It trumps other expenditure. So you do not even talk about capital expenditure until you have released all first-line charges and statutory expenditure. Now, if we want to look at what is happening, I think that there is something positive about what is happening to us today. In terms of every challenge can be transformed into an opportunity for us to develop. Now, Nigerians have been talking about diversification of the economy, and various governments, not just this one, has made it a mantra. So this is an opportunity. If we have real technocrats in power, if we have people who have a dip, for them to think of how we can move away from these oil rents. Because if you look at it, beyond even the fall in crude oil prices, the countries in the West, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Asians are looking forward to a world not so reliant on crude oil. Patents have been registered for electric cars, and some companies are targeting that by the year 2020 they will be producing about 1 million of it a year and shipping it around the world. So by the time we get to that stage, you discover that you have your crude oil and nobody's interested in looking at it. So beyond the shale that Americans have started pumping and the crude oil that has been discovered in other parts of Africa and the other parts of the world, we should begin to think beyond just selling crude oil and the rains that come from it and share it. Because the mindset I still see in government, and even in terms of the political parties, the opposition, is still a mindset of sharing. I haven't had enough about baking the cake before you think about sharing it. So that is what I think we should be focusing on. And something is also happening with Nigeria, because Nigerians are not looking through the budget. They're not reading enough. They simply look at the maze of figures and move on. Now, if you look at the capital expenditure, which was projected at about 630-something billion, and about 100 or so thereabout of it is supposed to come from Shopee. Now, with the fall in the price of crude oil and with what is happening, nothing is accruing to Shopee anymore. So you're talking about 500 and something for capital expenditure. But that's not all. If you look at that speech by the coordinating minister for the economy, he talked about various sums of money that are borrowing, which will be used to run certain capital projects this year. But that is not reflected as part of the overall capital expenditure. And we cannot continue having this disjointed approach to budgeting. You bring money from some donors or the money you draw down from loans that you're taking, and you treat it as separate from the ordinary budget. Take a look at it this way. They talked about bringing another $800 million to supplement work on the East-West Road. And the East-West Road, as you very well know, we've had votes and spent over 100 billion on it. Now, $800 million at the current exchange of about 168, the official, I'm not talking of what people are buying, gives you about 134 billion naira. Add it to over 100 that has been spent, you begin to ask yourself, how much will this road cost for us to complete it? What informed all these variations? And then they're taking money for the Mambila Plateau, the hydroelectric power dam. They're taking money from the World Bank for alternative and clean energy. Welcome ideas, but we must be able to have an integrated and comprehensive budget where Nigerians should be able to track, say, this is where this money is coming from, and this is where it is going to. And so that at the end of the day, they will be in a position to form an opinion whether public resources, whether it's from the Treasury direct, whether it's procured from loans, whether it's from grants or donations by public charity, the governments or individuals, they should have been combined together. And so we have a holistic picture of what the government is going to spend. And why do we say so? If you begin to subdivide the sense, by the time the monies are due for repayment, you come back to the National Assembly and it will pile up into one debt repayment obligations and schedule. So everything should come together so that we'll be able to know what exactly is going to be spent and where it's going to be spent.
With the policies that the federal government have introduced that are on ground, do you see a sense of seriousness or willingness by the government to diversify our economy away from crude oil?
What we have on ground appears a little bit cosmetic. Policies like the new auto policy, the agriculture transformation agenda, I see they're a little bit cosmetic in the sense that they do not go deep enough to win us away from just dependence on crude oil. And even within the crude oil scenario, the oil and gas, do we have value added to our crude oil? Why are we still importing refined products while we're exporting crude? How have we harnessed our gas to make sure that we use it to power our industries and thermal generating plants? And even the West African gas pipeline, have we been able to fulfill our obligations to all the countries like Ghana? Because I know at some point in time we are paying penalties because we are not giving them enough gas. If the gas, instead of flaring it, we should be able to extend to other parts of West Africa and even Central Africa. And then before you move away from that, you remember that the Obasanjo government talked about bitumen. There was a commission, there was so much noise made about it, but after a while, they forgot that bitumen. So if they could deepen the agriculture transformation agenda, if they could move into areas like the auto industry, which they talked about, complete the Ajaokuta steel mill, then we can begin to talk about a transformation, moving away from where we are to another area. And then the power sector must be actually reformed in terms of generating megawatts, being able to transmit them, and being able to distribute them. Despite all the noise we've made about building new power plants, the truth is that if all the new power plants come on stream, if they have enough gas to fire them, we have no transmission capacity because the grid as it is today will collapse at about 5,500 or 5,600 megawatts. So even if we produce 15,000 megawatts and pump it through the grid cannot sustainably transmit it to the distribution points where the discos will now take it to our living rooms. So in essence, diversifying the economy involves a holistic approach to planning the economy. You have the power sector, which feeds industries. You have agric. You even have within the oil industry, you even have education. And, you know, all these things come together to gradually begin to wean us from overdependence on the sale of crude oil.
Now, the issue of the excess crude account was brought on the floor of the Senate during the debate on the budget for it to pass second reading. And some lawmakers expressed concern about the amount of funds still available in the excess crude account.
Now, why would they say they should have more money in the excess crude account when we are all living witnesses that the governors have been saying disband account, at every federation account meeting they keep drawing from the money? So do you draw from the money and it replenishes itself automatically when the price of crude oil is going down? What they have there is likely to be what the actuals are. And you